My father laughed in the middle of the boardroom when I said I would not take over the company. He signed everything away to someone else, leaving me only a pity check. They had no idea I was building something else, a platform that could flip the entire board. The day they announced the new heir, the ticker behind the stage flashed my startup's new valuation $90 million, and that was just the opening number. My name is Sienna Rogers. I am 32 years old, by training. I am an architect, by necessity. I am a founder. I grew up in Denver, breathing the thin air and the exhaust fumes from my father's construction sites. I watched him build an empire from dirt, grit, and handshake deals. I fled to the West Coast to learn a different way to build, a cleaner, faster, smarter way, only to be pulled back by the gravity of family obligation. The family business is Whitaker Land Build, WLB. It sounds solid, grounded, like the earth it develops and scrapes clean. My father, Robert Whitaker, is a legend in this town. He is a man who sees land not for what it is, but for what he can force it to become. His company is a regional conglomerate that owns half the skyline and most of the sprawling suburbs. It is an empire of concrete, steel, and legacy. It is his entire world, and he expected it to be mine. The email arrived 3 days ago. The subject line was a single, curt word. Transition. Robert does not invite. He summons. The meeting was not held in the sterile WLB boardroom downtown. He chose the Broadmoor's Cheyenne Lodge, a place of old money, dark wood, and vaulted ceilings. This was not a meeting. It was theater. He wanted the chandeliers, the valet parking, and the soft, deferential clinking of ice water in heavy glasses. He wanted an audience for his coronation. The entire executive board was there. Men I had known my entire life, men who had patted my head as a child and now appraised me with cool, neutral faces. Their suits were pressed, their loyalty absolute, and the local press, the Denver Business Journal, a few fawning real estate bloggers, and a lifestyle editor. They smelled blood in the water, or at least, the anointing of a new monarch. I stood at the back, near the polished mahogany doors, my slim leather portfolio feeling ridiculously light against the oppressive weight of the room. Robert stood at the podium, bathed in a warm spotlight that made his silver hair glow. He spoke for 20 minutes. He used words like legacy, responsibility, stewardship, and most of all, Whitaker. He smiled that practiced, heavy-lidded smile that had closed 10-figure deals and buried competitors. And so, he concluded, his voice resonating with false humility, it is my great pride and profound duty to begin the transition of Whitaker Land Build to the next generation, to my daughter, Sienna. He gestured to me. The spotlight swung, blinding me. I felt the heat on my face. Every eye in the room pivoted, a silent, collective intake of breath. This was the moment. I walked forward, my heels clicking on the hardwood. I did not walk to the podium to stand beside him. I walked to the long, imposing executive table, where the board sat like stone figures. I placed my hands on the back of an empty chair. Thank you, Father. My voice was quiet, but the array of microphones on the table picked it up, amplifying it through the room's hidden speakers. I appreciate the offer. I appreciate the faith you have in me. I paused, letting the silence stretch. But I must respectfully decline. You could have heard a blueprint drop. It was a thick, heavy quiet, the kind that sucks all the air out of a space. Robert's smile froze. It did not fade. It cracked. Then it started. A low chuckle, a rumble deep in his chest. He looked around the table, as if sharing a private joke. Then he threw his head back and laughed. It was not a warm laugh. It was not the laugh of a proud father. It was sharp, percussive, and brutal. It echoed off the expensive, wood-paneled walls. It was a laugh of pure, unadulterated, dismissive ridicule. The board members shifted, suddenly fascinated by their own notepads, their shoes, the wood grain of the table, anywhere but at me, anywhere but at him. Decline, Robert finally sputtered, wiping a theatrical tear from the corner of his eye. You decline. He said it not as a question, but as an absurdity. And what exactly will you do instead? Sienna. Go back to California. What will you build? He turned to the board, his arms wide, sharing the joke. She wants to build those little box houses with her computers. His voice dripped with contempt. She thinks you can build a skyscraper with an algorithm. She wants to build sustainable carnival toys. The laughter from the board was nervous, sycophantic, but it was there. They laughed with him. Robert's smile vanished, replaced by a cold mask of decisiveness. He had been prepared for this. He saw my refusal not as a valid business decision, but as a childish tantrum. He already had the backup plan, the real plan. He tapped a rich, leather-bound file folder in front of him. Very well. He did not look at me again. He addressed the room. The transition remains. The legacy of WLB is secure. He pulled out a heavy, ink-black pen. In light of Sienna's preoccupation with her hobbies, I am signing a proxy granting temporary controlling shares and full operational oversight to someone who understands the brand, the market, and the family name. He paused for effect. My eldest daughter, Ava Whitaker. Ava materialized from the front row, as if on cue. My half-sister. She was all Los Angeles gloss, white teeth, and PR polish. She specialized in branding, in spinning narratives, in being seen at the right parties. She had not poured a foundation or read a structural schematic in her entire life. She glided to the podium, placed a perfectly manacled hand on his shoulder, and smiled for the cameras as he signed the document with a flourish. The press cameras flashed, a strobe light assault, capturing the new heir and the old king. I was already a ghost, a footnote in the room. The meeting dissolved. Ava was immediately swarmed by the press, her voice cutting through the din, using phrases like, a new era of sustainable luxury, and honoring the past while building the future. Empty, polished words. Robert's CFO, a gray man named Harris, whom I'd known since kindergarten, approached me as I gathered my portfolio. He had the decency to look ashamed, but not enough to meet my eyes. Sienna. He slid a plain white bank envelope across the table toward me. It landed with a soft, insulting thud. Your father wanted you to have this, a severance of sorts, to help with your, projects. I opened it, a cashier's check, $75,000. And this. He passed me a single folded sheet of heavy bond paper. It was not a non-compete. I was never technically an employee. It was what the lawyers called a familial advisory, a strongly worded, legally vetted warning shot, a recommendation that I not engage with, solicit, or in any way disrupt any existing or pending partners, contractors, or clients of Whitaker Land Build. It's for your own good, Sienna, Harris mumbled, already backing away. Don't fight him on this. Just take it. $75,000 to walk away from an 8-figure inheritance. It was not an offer. It was a punchline. It was the price of my dismissal. I looked up, across the room, a young reporter from a local tech blog. Someone who had clearly not been on the approved invite list, still had his smartphone angled toward Robert. My father was talking to a major concrete contractor, gesturing back toward me, and he laughed again, that same booming, dismissive, final laugh. The phone's red recording light was on. I knew, instantly, that footage was gold. It would be on the internal WLB Slack channel before I even reached the parking garage. It would be clipped. It would be shared. It would become a meme. The boss's daughter, the architect, getting laughed out of her own inheritance. I learned later they called it Laughgate. I zipped my portfolio. The sound was unnaturally loud in my own ears. I did not say another word. I did not look at Robert. I did not acknowledge Ava as she held court, describing her vision for luxury eco-conscious living, a phrase that meant absolutely nothing and cost a fortune to market. I walked out of the Cheyenne Lodge, past the obsequious valets, and into the sharp, cold, thin Denver air. The silence in my car was deafening, a ringing in my ears. My phone buzzed. An alert from the Business Journal. Ava Whitaker to helm WLB in new era, shakeup, press conference scheduled. They didn't know. Robert, in his arrogance, didn't know. Ava, in her blissful ignorance, certainly didn't know. For the last 18 months, while I was supposedly finding myself on the West Coast and then helping out back home after his health scare, I had been building. I was not just an architect, I was a founder. Nexa House Labs. It was registered in Delaware. It was funded by my own savings, the sale of my California condo, and 2 small, silent checks from old college friends who believed in me more than my own father did. It was operating in total stealth from a leased warehouse in the Rhino district. We were not building carnival toys. We were designing and fabricating high-specification, rapidly deployable modular medical clinics and worker housing. We were using a proprietary AI, a platform I had coded myself, to optimize logistics, material sourcing, and energy compliance before a single piece of steel was cut. We were building for speed, efficiency, and sustainability. 3 things WLB knew nothing about. I pulled over onto a scenic overlook, the entire city sprawling below me, the city Robert thought he owned. I took out my phone. I had one contact saved simply as M.B. Maya Brooks, my lead engineer. I typed a single, prearranged message, the one we had agreed would light the fuse. Activate sunrise, 72 hours. I hit send. The sun was beginning to dip behind the mountains, casting long, cold shadows over the WLB headquarters downtown. My father had just handed Ava a legacy. He had just handed me a war. That $75,000 check in my pocket was the best investment I ever received. It was the price of my freedom. It was the seed money for his destruction. The clock was ticking. 72 hours. Let them have their press conference. My phone is silent now. The sunrise command sent. 72 hours. It feels like the longest and shortest deadline of my life, but this attack did not begin today at the Broadmoor. It began 3 years ago, with a phone call that tore my life on the West Coast apart. Robert Whitaker, the immovable object, had met an unstoppable force, his own aorta, a massive coronary. He did not call me. Ava did. Her voice an unfamiliar, brittle thing. I was in a Santa Monica studio, finalizing a pitch for a cantilevered glass box that would hang over the Pacific. 12 hours later, I was on a red-eye back to Denver, walking into the sterile, beeping nightmare of a cardiac ICU. He looked small in that bed, smaller than I had ever seen him. The empire builder, the man who moved tons of earth with a phone call, was reduced to a matrix of tubes and flickering green readouts. I did not just come back to visit, I came back to manage. I took the thick binder of medical information from a shell-shocked Ava, who seemed more distressed by the hospital's poor fluorescent lighting than the actual medical prognosis. I, the architect, became the logistics manager for my father's life. I learned to navigate the absurd, cruel labyrinth of American health insurance, arguing with billing departments over 6-figure charges for procedures I could not pronounce. I sat with physical therapists, translating their upbeat, gentle instructions into the blunt, non-negotiable commands my father would actually listen to. I learned the precise chemical dance of his beta blockers, anticoagulants, and statins. I managed the complex schedule that kept him alive. My mother has been gone for many years. She was the buffer, the soft light in Robert's harsh, angular world. She was the one who translated his demands into requests, his anger into concern. Without her, the family structure was just him, me, and Ava, tethered together by the immense, crushing gravity of Whitaker land build. Ava had already established her beachhead in Los Angeles. She was not just Ava Whitaker. She was Ava Whitaker, a brand. She was a frequent guest on podcasts about female empowerment in the built environment, speaking eloquently about aesthetics and narrative while remaining blissfully, profoundly ignorant of load-bearing walls or supply chain logistics. During the crisis, she flew in for 48-hour stretches, She would take a somber-faced selfie supporting the patriarch for her carefully curated Instagram feed, whisper about how stressful it all was, and then fly back to a keynote speech on the future of luxury wellness spaces. She was building her brand. I was managing his rehabilitation. I moved back into my childhood home, a 32-year-old architect, sleeping in a room still holding the ghosts of my high school self. My father's recovery was slow, grueling, and it dominated the house. His frustration was a static charge in the air. My nights, however, were mine. After his 9 p.m. dose of medication, after the house settled into the quiet, rhythmic hum of the oxygen concentrator, I would go to the garage. It was cold, smelling of oil, old lawn equipment, and concrete dust. I set up 2 collapsible tables, my high-powered workstation rig I'd shipped from California, and a small, whining space heater. That garage became my studio. It became my lab. While Robert slept, I designed. I could not use my own name, not really, and I certainly could not use the Whitaker name. So I formed a simple, anonymous legal entity in Delaware, Whitco Design. It sounded like a boutique interior design firm. Harmless, small, and utterly beneath the notice of a giant like WLB. I used it to take on the projects no one else wanted. A zoning variance for a local coffee shop, a minor structural refit for a dental office, a deck permit, small, fast jobs that paid the bills and, more importantly, kept my skills sharp. I won a few local contracts, nothing that would ever appear on the same spreadsheet as WLB's multi-state operations. It was a cover. It was my proving ground. During the day, I was slowly, reluctantly, pulled into the WLB machine. Robert insisted from his recovery chair, "Watch how it's done. Sienna, sit in, learn the real business." So I sat in his meetings, first via video conference, then in person. I reviewed his site plans, and I saw the rot. It was not decay. It was stagnation. I watched WLB spend millions on green initiatives that were pure, cynical marketing. They would spec a $50,000 recycled material carpet for a massive, inefficiently designed concrete box and issue a press release about their commitment to the planet. Their designs were old. Their processes were relics. They wasted fortunes on labor downtime because of poor scheduling. They wasted money on over-ordering materials that ended up as scrap. They fought preventable zoning battles because their feasibility studies were archaic. The local permitting process, in particular, was a joke. It was a mountain of triplicate paperwork, of physical blueprints that had to be hand-delivered. A system designed in the 1970s, the WLB veterans, men who had worked for my father for 30 years, treated this bureaucratic nightmare like an unchangeable law of nature. I saw it for what it was, a bad user interface. In my garage studio, I spent a week writing a script, a simple piece of code. It automated the submission process, cross-referenced new city zoning codes against a design file in real time, and flagged conflicts before submission. For my small Whitcoa projects, I cut the average local permit approval time from 90 days to less than 10. It was just a script, a simple tool, but it worked. I saw a real bleeding wound at WLB. They were breaking ground on a massive industrial park in a rural county, miles from any real infrastructure. They needed housing for 300 temporary workers. The WLB plan was standard rent acres of cheap trailers, miserable in the summer, freezing in the winter, inefficient, and depressing. I made my one and only proposal. I stayed up for 72 hours straight, adapting my West Coast designs, running cost analyses. "We can do this differently," I said, cornering him in his home office. He was stronger now, sitting upright, his old fire returning. I unrolled the schematics on his desk. "Modular," I said, my voice sharp with enthusiasm. "We prefabricate the units off-site, high insulation, low energy, standardized components. We can deploy the entire housing village in 3 weeks, not 3 months. It's cleaner, faster, and the numbers work. Look." I pushed the cost analysis sheet in front of him. "We can even resell the units to the county as affordable housing after the project wraps." Robert did not look at the plans. He did not look at the numbers. He was still weak from his recovery, but his voice was sharp with his old, familiar disdain. "Trailers," he said. "These are not trailers. Dad, these are high-efficiency modular structures. The tech is sound." "It's cheap," he snapped. He tapped the heavy, embossed WLB logo on his letterhead. "We don't do cheap. Sienna, we build monuments. We build landmarks. We don't build tin cans for farmhands. It's trashy. It looks cheap." He dismissed me with a wave of his hand. "Cheap trash," he muttered, using the old word. That was the moment. That was the real break. He did not just reject the idea. He rejected the very concept of efficiency as an aesthetic. He was building monuments to his own ego. I wanted to build solutions. I went back to the garage. I said nothing. I took the modular housing plans and pinned them to the wall. He was wrong. The numbers were right. The method was right. But the design was not the core problem. The system was, I stopped designing buildings and started designing the machine that designs buildings. I began coding. I took my simple permit automation script and expanded it. What if I could predict everything? What if I could model the supply chain, the labor cost, the transport logistics, and the long-term energy expenditure for every single component I called the model GridMorph? I fed it raw data, steel prices from 3 continents, shipping lane delays, local union labor rates in 6 states, county-specific emissions regulations, solar panel efficiency curves, late at night, fueled by coffee and a cold, clarifying anger. I ran my worker housing project through GridMorph. The numbers that came back were staggering. My model predicted the exact cost and carbon footprint for every single panel, every window, every weld. The data was clean. It was undeniable. It proved that my cheap modules were 30% more cost-effective over a 5-year lifespan than his monumental concrete blocks. The work became my obsession. It was my secret. On a whim, I packaged the data. I wrote a crisp, anonymous 2-page white paper. The title was Dynamic Modeling for Rapid Infrastructure Deployment. I sent it to exactly one email address, an address for a managing partner at Northline Impact, a boutique impact fund in San Francisco I had admired from afar. I sent it from a new, sterile Proton Mail account. I did not expect a reply. 1 week later, an email appeared in my inbox. It was 3 sentences long. "This data is compelling. The GridMorph model is elegant. Who are you? And when are you calling your seed round?" I stared at the screen. Seed round. I looked through the garage window. At the doorway to the main house, I could hear my father coughing. He was getting stronger. He was walking without his cane. He was talking about returning to the office full-time, about a new golf course development. I could not move. Not yet. I could not build a company while being his caregiver. I could not ignite this fuse while living under his roof. It felt, despite everything, like a betrayal. So I replied to the fund. "Not yet. We are in stealth development. We will contact you when the platform is operational." I kept my head down. I managed his meds. I filed my small Whitco permits. I perfected GridMorph in the cold garage. I waited. I waited for him to be fully recovered. I waited for him to be healthy, strong, and back on his throne. I waited until he was completely, fully himself again. And then he called the meeting at the Broadmoor. He stood on that stage, bathed in the spotlight, strong and arrogant and vital. And he laughed in my face, that laugh. It did not just dismiss my idea. It dismissed the last 3 years of my life. It dismissed the nights in the ICU, the fights with the insurance companies, the quiet, grueling work in the garage, the data, the code. He thought I was the same girl who had fled to California. He thought I was a hobbyist. As I drove away from that hotel, that envelope with the $75,000 check felt like gunpowder in my pocket. He did not just set me free. He gave me the matches. The Rhino warehouse is invisible. From the street, it is just another brick and graffiti casualty of gentrification, tucked between a defunct rail spur and a craft brewery that is always temporarily closed. There is no sign. There is no corporate logo. There is only a single, Steel fire door with a biometric scanner wired into the frame. I pressed my thumb against the glass. A faint click, and the heavy door hissed open. The contrast is immediate. Outside, it is cold, decaying industrial Denver. Inside, it is a clean, white, brightly lit nerve center. This is Nexa House Labs. What my father laughed at, what he called carnival toys, was a fundamental misunderstanding of the entire concept. Robert builds buildings, he buys land, pours concrete, raises steel, and cuts a ribbon. It is a slow, expensive, analog process. I am not building buildings, I am building the factory that builds buildings. Nexa House is not an architecture firm, it is a logistics platform. We are a software company that manifests in physical steel and glass. We do one thing: we deploy high specification, fully certified modular structures clinics, labs, worker housing faster, cheaper, and with a smaller carbon footprint than any traditional builder on the planet. My father sees a modular house and thinks of a double-wide trailer. I see a high-performance data packet that you can walk into. The entire system is built on 3 pillars. The first pillar is the library. We do not design from scratch. We have a pre-certified, pre-engineered digital library of components, a Clinic 12 module, a LabCore unit, a Bunk 4 residential pod. Each one is already stress-tested, compliant with 90% of state building codes, and has a defined bill of materials. The second pillar is the simulation. This is GridMorph, the AI I built in my father's garage. A client does not just see a floor plan, they see a full, 5-year operational simulation. GridMorph models everything: construction time, shipping routes, local labor costs, and most critically, the total cost of ownership. It shows them the energy consumption, the maintenance schedule, the carbon emissions down to the kilogram. It shows them the truth of their investment. The third pillar is the supply chain. We do not build, we assemble. We have a distributed network of fabricators, small, specialized workshops across the country. They build our modules to our exact specs, like a component for a motherboard. We do not own the factories, we own the process. Nexa House is the brain. They are the limbs. When I walked in, the core team was already there. Summoned by the Sunrise Command, the warehouse was buzzing. There are only 3 people I trust with this. Maya Brooks, our head of supply chain. She came from a global logistics giant where she spent a decade moving perishable medical supplies through disaster zones. She thinks in terms of shipping containers, crane capacity, and timetables. She is the one who makes the digital model physically manifest on a patch of dirt. Dante Ruiz, our chief structural engineer. He is a quiet, intense man who left a high-paying job at a celebrity architect's firm in Chicago. He believes traditional construction is fundamentally, morally wasteful. He is the one who makes our modules bolt together with micrometer precision, ensuring they are stronger and safer than anything built on site. He designed the interlocking exoframe that makes them stackable, earthquake-resistant, and visually striking. And Ivy Shore, our legal counsel. She is the sharpest, most ruthless contracts lawyer I have ever met. She specializes in intellectual property and complex interstate permitting. She is the one who built the legal armor for Nexa House. She was the first to speak, holding up a tablet. They signed ironclad, mutually binding, absolute NDAs. Every employee, every fabricator, every contractor, we are a black box. Sienna, legally, we barely exist. Good, I said, dropping my portfolio. How's the prototype? Dante pointed to the center of the warehouse. There it sat, our proof of concept. Clinic 12. It was a sleek, self-contained, 1,000 square foot medical clinic. It was fully assembled. We ran the drill again this morning, Maya said, her eyes bright. The modules arrived from the fabricator at 0600. The crane crew had them locked onto the test foundation by noon, full assembly, weather sealing, and systems integration completed. She checked her watch. 36 hours, flat, from truck to operational. Show me, I said. Dante hit a switch. The entire unit powered on, not from the city grid, but from a self-contained mini solar station and battery array we had designed. The HVAC system hummed to life, the medical-grade air filtration kicked in, and the digital check-in screens glowed. It was a high-tech hospital in a box. "Grid morph," I said. Dante tapped a screen, bringing up the dashboard. "Grid morph version 2. We ran the simulation for the Clinic 12 against a comparable WLB project, the one in Elbert County. We used their own public tender data." The numbers glowed on the wall display. "Their traditional build-out, including delays and overruns, has a 5-year operational cost of messy, our model, based on the prototype's actual performance data." He hit a key. "Grid morph V2 projects an 18% reduction in total operational cost. 18, and that's conservative. 18%, a number that would make any CFO's head turn." "It's time," I said. "Where is Northline?" Ivy smiled. "They're in the conference room. Been here for an hour. They honored the blackout. Northline Impact, the fund that had emailed me months ago. They were the only people outside of this room who knew what we were building. I had held them at bay for as long as I could, until Robert had officially, publicly, cast me out. The demo was fast. No PowerPoint. No theoretical. We took them onto the floor. We showed them Clinic 12. We let them touch the steel. We showed them the 36-hour assembly video. Then we took them upstairs and showed them the brain grid morph. The managing partner, a woman with zero patience and a terrifyingly quick mind, just stared at the simulation. She watched the cost data and emissions data recalculate in real time as I dragged and dropped new modules onto a virtual sitemap. "You built a high-speed logistics platform for infrastructure," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," I said. "And you've been sitting on this, waiting for your father to—" "What?" "To give me a reason," I said. "He gave me one today." We went back to the conference room. She did not waste time. "The seed round we discussed is still on the table. $6.5 million. I nodded. "But," she said, "it's conditional. We are an impact fund. We do not invest in theories. We invest in traction. That $6.5 million is contingent on you landing an anchor contract, a real one, something that proves the model at scale." "We have a target," I said, already pulling up the file. "Apex Biocare. A fast-growing, brilliantly funded biotech company specializing in remote diagnostics and gene therapy. They were in a race. They had just announced a massive 3-state expansion into the rural heartland, targeting communities that were, in their words, medical deserts. Apex needs to build dozens of small, high-tech treatment centers," I explained. "And they needed to do it 6 months ago. Their competition is fierce. Their primary bottleneck is not money. It is speed to market. They are locked in traditional construction and permitting hell. WLB is bidding on that contract," the Northline partner said. "I know," I said. "Robert is bidding on it with concrete, multi-year timelines, and golf course logic. He thinks he's their only option. What's your proposal?" "B is promising them groundbreaking in 8 months," I said. "We are promising them a license to handover in under 120 days. The partner's eyebrows shot up. "From permit approval to patient ready in 4 months. That is not possible, not with medical-grade facilities." "It is," I said. "If you've already automated the permitting scripts and the modules are pre-certified. We sent the initial white paper to their COO 2 hours ago, right after I left the Broadmoor. For the next 48 hours, we lived in that warehouse. We did not sleep. We existed on coffee and adrenaline. The Sunrise Command was not just for my team. It was a signal to our entire hidden network. Fabricators cleared their lines. Logistics partners reserved trucking fleets. The email from Apex Biocare arrived at 4 in the morning on the second day. It was not from the COO. It was from their CEO. It was blunt. Your under 120 days proposal is either genius or malpractice. We are interested, but we have a new, mandatory federal standard for air particulate control that just came down. Our current contractors say it adds 6 months to their build. Your move. I looked at Dante. He was already pulling up the schematics for the Clinic 12 HVAC. I wrote back. The new standard is not a problem. Our modules are hermetically sealed by design. We can integrate the new filtration spec at the fabrication level. It adds 0 time to our assembly. The reply was almost instant. If you can put a guaranteed delivery date, in writing, of 100 days, and meet the new medical standard, we will sign a letter of intent. 100 days. A nice, round, impossible number. I looked at Maya. She was running logistics routes on her screen. It's tight. Winter is coming. A single blizzard in Wyoming and we're dead. I looked at Dante. The filtration units exist, but the supplier is in Germany. The lead time is 12 weeks. Not good enough, Maya said. I looked at the grid morph display. The AI was churning through data, highlighting shipping lanes, fabricator schedules, and weather patterns. A red light blinked a bottleneck. The German supplier. Reroute, I said. Grid morph. Find another supplier. The system searched. There's a domestic supplier, Dante said, reading the screen. A military contractor. They make mobile surgical units. Their filtration specs are 10 times better than the new federal standard, but they are expensive, 20% more. Does it matter? I asked the room. No, Ivy said, not looking up from her laptop. Not if we get the contract. The cost is irrelevant next to the speed. Maya. The domestic supplier is in Utah. We can have the units trucked to our fabricators in 2 days. I turned back to my keyboard. I opened the reply to the Apex CEO. I looked at the 100-day offer. It was a test. They wanted to see if I would blink. I typed my response. 100 days is inefficient. I attached a file. It was a 20-page document. It was not a proposal. It was a schedule. It was an hour-by-hour, day-by-day logistics and construction plan. From day 1 0900 site geotechnical survey to day 98 1700 final systems handover. It listed every permit, every truck route, every inspection. It was the output of GridMorph. It was the entire war plan, printed in black and white. My finger hovered over the send button. This was the moment. This was the shot. I hit send. 98 days. I wrote. We start Monday. The 72 hours following the sunrise command were not a blur. They were a high-resolution, slow-motion sequence of critical decisions. Every minute was sharp, defined, and loaded with consequence. While my phone buzzed with notifications from news outlets, Ava Whitaker tapped for New Era at WLB. Whitaker land build to host major press conference. We were in a legal and financial sprint. The first response came not as an email, but as a direct, encrypted video call. The CEO of Apex BioCare. He was a man in his 50s, with the exhausted, hyper-alert eyes of someone managing a public company in a high-stakes sector. He was not smiling. Mr. Rogers, he said, skipping any pleasantry. It's Ms. Rogers, I replied, my voice flat. He did not apologize. Your 98-day schedule. It landed on my desk. I've had my top engineering and compliance teams reviewing it for the last 6 hours. They have one conclusion. I waited. They think you are insane. They also think it's the only viable path to market we have. It is not insane, I said, leaning forward. It's just logistics. Your current problem is that you treat construction and permitting as 2 separate, sequential battles. We treat it as a single, unified data problem. The schedule I sent you is not a proposal. It is an execution plan. Day 1 starts Monday. He stared at me, unblinking. WLB is bidding on this, your father's company. I am aware, I said. They are offering you a groundbreaking in 8 months. I am offering you 6 operational, patient-ready centers in just over 3. The new federal air standard is already integrated, I said, not missing a beat. We sourced a military-grade domestic supplier. The filtration units are already allocated to our fabricators. It's in the schedule I sent. Page 14, Section B. He looked down, presumably at the file. A slow, thin smile spread across his face. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator that has just spotted its prey. "My board will crucify me if this fails," he said. "And your shareholders will deify you when we open 6 new treatment centers before your competition has even broken ground," I retorted. "You are not buying a building, sir. You are buying time, and we are the only ones selling it." The silence stretched. I heard him exhale, a sharp, decisive breath. "Ivy," I said, looking just off camera to where she sat, "please send the framework agreement to the Apex legal team." The CEO's eyebrows shot up. "You already have a contract drafted." "We do not waste time," I said. 30 minutes later, the digital, ironclad agreement was signed, a $45 million framework contract for 6 initial Clinic 12 centers, with performance-based options to expand to 30 centers nationwide. The anchor contract was secured. My next call was to Northline Impact. I forwarded the signed Apex agreement. The managing partner, the one who had given me the anchor contract condition, picked up on the first ring. "You got it," she said. She sounded impressed. "Apex, that's a hell of an anchor. Rogers." "The term sheet," I said, "is on its way," she replied. 6.5 million. As discussed, expanded seed, with a very aggressive Series A option for us. We'll sign it tonight. But there's a new condition, a media condition. I felt a cold knot tighten. Which is, we're investors. We invest in a thesis. Our thesis is that your technology is the future, and the old way, she paused. The WLB way is the past. We want to demonstrate that thesis, publicly. "What are you proposing?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "When is your father's big press conference? The one anointing your sister?" "Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. "Perfect," she said, her voice sharp. "We announce our news at the same time. We are going to counter-program them. They get to talk about legacy. You, Northline, and Apex BioCare get to announce a $45 million contract that will revolutionize rural healthcare. Let the market decide which story is more compelling." This was a declaration of war, a public, direct, unavoidable confrontation. "I need one more thing," I said, my mind racing. The timing was critical. "I don't want the money to wire tomorrow. I want it wired today, T-1 day, before the press conference." "Why?" she asked. "The announcement is the news." "No," I said. "The announcement is just talk. I want the valuation to be fact before anyone steps up to a microphone. I want your $6.5 million to hit our bank account. And I want the new valuation that implies to be logged on the private market tickers before the market even opens tomorrow. When they announce Ava's new era, I want Nexa House's new valuation to already be history." There was a pause. I heard her tap a few keys. Then she laughed. A short, sharp bark of respect. "You're a shark, Rogers. I like it. You're not just creating news. You're setting a trap. Fine. The wire transfer is initiating now. You'll have it within the hour. Good luck. Tomorrow is going to be a show." She hung up. The warehouse was quiet. Save for the hum of the servers, the money was moving, the contract was signed, the stage was set. Ivy walked over, holding her laptop. Her face was pale, but her eyes were electric. "It's done," I said. "The wire is in. The Apex contract is locked." "Good," she said, tapping her screen. "Because I just finished my final review of the familial advisory document your father's CFO gave you. And it's beautiful," she said, a wolf-like grin spreading across her face. "It's an unenforceable, vaguely threatening piece of legal tissue paper." He was arrogant. "Explain," I said. "It's a non-solicitation agreement, and a weak one at that," Ivy explained, her voice precise, cutting. "But it's explicitly written to apply to any employee, officer, director, or formal agent of Whitaker Landbuild, Sienna. You are none of those." "I was his daughter. I was in meetings. You were an observer. You never signed an employment contract. You were never on the WLB payroll. I checked. For 3 years. You never drew a salary. The $75,000, I said. The check I still had, uncashed, in my portfolio. Is a gift, Ivy said, her grin widening. Harris was sloppy. He's an old-world CFO. The check memo just says family distribution. It does not say severance, which would imply employment. It does not say consulting fee. It's a gift, a dismissal, an insult, and legally, it is the key that unlocks our entire defense. You have no fiduciary duty to WLB. You have no formal binding ties. You are, in the eyes of the law, a free agent. You are fully, 100%, cleared to compete. A wave of relief, so profound it was almost dizzying, washed over me. I had been operating in the shadows, but Ivy had just proven we were standing in broad daylight. My father's attempt to box me out with a vague threat and a pity check had, in fact, given me the very freedom I needed. The chime of an incoming email broke the silence. We both looked at the monitor. It was from Ava. The subject line was, Urgent Brand Unification Asset Transfer. I opened it. The email was a masterpiece of corporate buzzspeak. It was full of synergies, holistic brand narratives, and forward-facing integration. It was also a naked power grab, though a pathetically small one. Sienna, it read. As I take the helm of WLB, it is critical that we present a unified brand front to ensure a smooth transition and avoid any client confusion. I need you to transfer all client accounts, active project files, and associated intellectual property from your Whitco Design side projects. We will be rolling these under the WLB umbrella immediately. Please have this transfer completed by end of day, so we can reference our full-service family brand at the press conference tomorrow. Thanks. I stared at the screen. Ava, my half-sister, the PR specialist, she was preparing for her big day, her coronation, and her first official act was to try and seize my tiny 3-year-old portfolio of coffee shop permits and dental office refits. She thought that was my great ambition. She thought, Whitco was the toy my father was talking about. They had no idea. They were preparing to fight a ghost. This is a gift, Ivy whispered, reading over my shoulder. This proves she sees you as a small-time operator. She's consolidating her power, but she's aiming at a gnat. How do I respond? You comply, Ivy said. You give her exactly what she asked for, and nothing more. You log the exchange. We prove, legally, that you are acting in good faith to transfer assets of a completely separate, non-competing business. I sat down. I opened my Whitco folder. I pulled the 5 tiny project files, 2 zoning variances, 1 deck permit, the dental office, and the coffee shop. I created a single, tidy zip file. I drafted a new email. My hands were perfectly steady. Ava, I wrote. Congratulations on the new role. Attached, please find a summary of the active Whitco projects you requested for your review. Happy to assist in a smooth transition. Best, Sienna. I did not attach the grid morph code. I did not attach the Clinic 12 schematics. I did not attach my automated permitting scripts. I sent her the dental office blueprints. BCC me, Ivy said. And, done. The entire exchange, with timestamps, is now logged in our legal vault. I hit send. Ava was now in possession of my deck permits. She was probably, at that very moment, feeling powerful, victorious. The long night was finally ending. The sun was just beginning to touch the edges of the mountains. The warehouse was quiet. The money was in the bank. The contract was signed. The trap was set. My phone buzzed one last time. It was not a text. It was a new email. It was from Robert. There was no subject line. The body of the email contained 6 words. Good luck with the toys. The contempt was so thick I could almost smell it. A mix of cigar smoke and boardroom polish. He was sitting in his castle, laughing at me. He was laughing, and he was going to sleep, secure in his victory. I looked at his email for a long time. The mockery, the finality. I typed my reply. One line. I'll need it. I hit send. I let him have his final, dismissive laugh. I let him believe I was agreeing, that I was defeated. I shut my laptop. Maya, I called out, get the fabrication lines on high alert. Dante, I want the site prep teams ready to mobilize. Ivy, get the press release ready to go. I stood up. The first real sunlight streaming through the warehouse's high, dusty windows. Let's go to a press conference. We did not go to the press conference. There was no point. The war would not be won by sitting in my father's audience. It would be won from our own stage, on our own terms. 10 a.m. The exact moment Ava was scheduled to walk to her podium, we were in the Rhino warehouse, in the stark, clean assembly bay, standing directly in front of the gleaming Clinic 12 prototype. There was no audience, no champagne, no mahogany lectern, just me, Maya, Dante, and Ivy, and a single, high-definition camera connected to a dedicated server. We were launching an unannounced, unpromoted, direct-to-market livestream. We sent the private link to exactly 50 people. 10 minutes before we went live, the key editors at Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, and the top-tier construction and medical trade publications, and of course, the CEO of Apex BioCare and the partners at Northline Impact. Ivy was at a side monitor, watching the public feed of the WLB event, her headphones on. They're starting, she said, her voice tight. The room is packed, full house. I could picture it perfectly. The grand ballroom at the Four Seasons, the scent of expensive coffee and fresh-cut flowers, the heavy embossed press folders, and behind the stage, the brand-new WLB logo, a design Ava had probably paid a six-figure sum for, glowing on a massive wall-to-wall LED screen. A backdrop for her coronation. Ava is at the podium, Ivy reported, her eyes scanning the feed. She looks polished. I nodded. Of course she did. She was a brand. I looked at the small red light on our own camera. This was not about polish. This was about impact. Ava's speech just started, Ivy said. Keywords: legacy, stewardship, vision, innovation. I imagined the words echoing in that vast, carpeted room, hollow and predictable. There it is, Ivy whispered, pointing to the monitor. Just like our source said. The fatal mistake, the detail a junior tech at the AV rental company had leaked to a friend, who owed Dante a favor. The massive LED screen behind Ava was not just showing her logo. In a foolish attempt to look market-aware, the WLB event team had requested a live data feed. The AV tech, using a standard template, had patched in a live ticker for the private capital markets. It was scrolling harmlessly at the bottom of the screen, just a string of meaningless letters and numbers, a generic graphic of business that no one, least of all Ava, was actually reading. They were broadcasting their own executioner. Ivy looked at me. We are live. The link is hot. Forbes is in. Wall Street Journal is in. They are watching. I stepped forward, the bright camera light hitting my face. I was not wearing a power suit. I was in my work clothes, the same thing I wore every day in the lab. Good morning, I said, my voice steady, amplified by a small lapel mic. My name is Sienna Rogers. I am the founder and CEO of Nexa House Labs. I did not pause. I did not waste a single second. For the last 18 months, my team and I have been operating in stealth to solve the single biggest crisis in critical infrastructure development time. The old way of building is too slow, too expensive, and too wasteful. It is failing us. I gestured behind me to the Clinic 12. This is the solution. It is not just a building, it is a high-specification medical clinic, delivered as a pre-certified, integrated platform. Cut. I imagined Ava, on her own stage, bathed in warm, soft light. At WLB, we believe in a future built on the foundations of our past, she would be saying, her voice brimming with practiced sincerity, a future of sustainable luxury and community focus. Back to me, the cold, hard light, the cold, hard facts. Today, Nexa House Labs is officially moving out of stealth, I announced. We are announcing a $45 million framework agreement with Apex BioCare, a leader in advanced medical treatment. I saw Maya and Dante exchange a sharp, triumphant look behind the camera. Apex needs to deploy a network of advanced rural care centers immediately, I continued. The traditional construction model, the one my father's company, WLB, is also bidding on, promised them groundbreaking in 8 months and completion in 2 years. This is our counteroffer. Nexa House will deploy the first 6 fully operational, federally compliant medical centers in 98 days. I let that sink in. We are not starting in 98 days, I clarified. We are finished. We are breaking ground on all 6 sites, simultaneously, across 3 states. This coming Monday. Ivy, still monitoring her feed, gave me a sharp, subtle nod the moment. This rapid deployment, I said, looking directly into the lens, is made possible by our lead investment partners, Northline Impact. Their press release is hitting the wire. Right now, they have led an expanded seed round, giving Nexa House the full capital backing to execute the Apex contract and scale our platform nationwide. I took a breath. This was the kill shot. This funding round, I said, my voice dropping slightly, was finalized yesterday, as of market open this morning. It sets the new pre-money valuation of Nexa House Labs at $90 million. The camera zoomed in. Tight on my face, I said nothing else. I just held its gaze. $90 million. Ivy ripped her headphones off. Her hand flew to her mouth. She was staring at her monitor, not at me. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Sienna, the ballroom." She did not need to describe it. I could see it. The phones. In that grand ballroom, in the middle of Ava's speech about vision, a symphony of vibrations began. 100 business reporters, contractors, and local politicians, all in one room, all receiving the same push notifications at the same instant. Forbes. Stealth startup Nexa House Labs, led by Sienna Rogers, raises at $90 million valuation, inks $45 million. Apex BioCare deal, TechCrunch. Daughter refuses family empire, launches $90 million. Competitor Nexa House instead. The Denver Business Journal. Sienna Rogers Nexa House poaches $45 million. Apex contract, leaving WLB at the altar. The polite, attentive silence of the room was shattered. It was replaced by the tap-tap-tap of thumbs on glass. People were not looking at the stage anymore. They were looking at their screens. They were looking at each other. They were looking at my father. I could see him, sitting in the front row, his back rigid. I could see the man next to him, a man named Morrison, the head of the largest concrete pouring syndicate in the state, a man who had been on my father's payroll for 20 years. Morrison's phone buzzed. He read it. His head snapped up. He leaned in, his mouth close to my father's ear, his voice a low, urgent whisper that would carry in the sudden quiet. "Robert," he hissed. "Robert, what is this Nexa House, a $90 million valuation, that modular product? That's your daughter. That's Sienna." And on stage, Ava, oblivious. She was in the zone, lost in her own script. Her PR smile locked in place. The teleprompter was still rolling. "And that is why," she projected, her voice bright and confident, "Whitaker Land and Build will be the new leader, the undisputed leader, in rural healthcare infrastructure." And then it happened. The screen, the giant, expensive, wall-to-wall LED screen behind her, the junior AV tech, the one monitoring the feeds, saw the same Forbes push notification as everyone else. He saw the name Nexa House and Sienna Rogers. He saw the $90 million number. He recognized the story. He thought, in a moment of catastrophic, beautiful panic, that this was part of the show. He thought he was helping. He thought he was supposed to put the big news on the big screen. He switched the feed. The scrolling ticker at the bottom of the screen vanished. The glowing Ava-approved WLB logo dissolved. It was replaced by a single, massive, screen-filling news banner, the Forbes headline. Nexa House Labs secures 45 NOAs. Apex contract, hits 90 amount valuation. And right next to it, a high-resolution press photo of the Clinic 12 prototype. My design, my work, a collective, audible gasp sucked the air from the ballroom. Ava stopped, mid-word. Struck. What? She hesitated. The teleprompter was still rolling, but the room was dead silent. She turned, a confused, annoyed look on her face, to see what everyone was staring at. She saw it. She saw the headline. She saw the name of my company. The blood drained from her face. Her perfectly applied makeup suddenly looked like a mask. A flustered MC in a bad suit ran onto the stage, grabbing a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be having some minor technical difficulties if you'll just... One moment. He was fumbling with a remote, his hands shaking, trying to get the screen to black. The screen went dark, but it was too late. The bomb had gone off. Every single person in that room had seen it. Ivy's feed was still live. The camera was zoomed in on the front row, on my father. Robert Whittaker was not looking at Ava. He was not looking at the panicked MC. He was staring, unblinking, directly into the lens of the main press camera, as if he could see me, as if he could bore a hole through the feed and into my soul. His face was not red with anger. It was a terrifying, pale, compressed white. It was the face of a king who had just watched his fortress walls vaporized in an instant. He leaned across the table, not to the MC, but to the young AV tech in the booth. His voice was not a yell. It was a low, brutal hiss, just loud enough for the podium microphone to catch the last, venomous word. Get the next slide on, now. Back in our warehouse, the red light on our camera clicked off. The live stream was over. The four of us stood in silence. The hum of the servers was the only sound. Maya let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for 3 days. Dante just stared at the Clinic 12, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. Ivy closed her laptop with a quiet, definitive snap. Well, she said, smoothing her jacket, the show has begun. My phone, dark for the past 30 minutes, lit up. It did not buzz once. It began to vibrate continuously on the table, a frantic, screaming demand from a world that had, in the span of 10 minutes, finally woken up. The vibration of my phone in the car was so intense it felt like the engine was rattling. It was not one call. It was dozens, an avalanche of notifications, texts, and alerts. But I was not looking at my screen. I was looking out the window, at the imposing glass tower of the Four Seasons Hotel. They're not expecting this, Ivy said from the passenger seat, closing her own laptop. They're in damage control. They'll be trying to spin this as a rumor, a technical glitch, a rogue employee. They're not prepared for a ground invasion. That's exactly what they're getting, I said. We pulled up. I bypassed the stunned valets and walked straight through the main doors. The lobby was electric. The press conference, designed to be a controlled, sterile, 1-hour coronation, had shattered. Reporters were clustered in the hallway, shouting into their phones. The WLB branding on the event signs looked garish and pathetic. 2 event staff security guards, wearing WLB guest badges, moved to block the ballroom entrance. I'm sorry, ma'am. The event is paused. We're not guests, Ivy said, her voice like ice. She held up her phone, displaying the Forbes headline. This is Sienna Rogers. She's the news. You have 2 choices. You can step aside, or you can be the 2 guards who get fired for blocking the $90 million story your boss is desperately trying to control. They looked at each other. They looked at me. They stepped aside. The ballroom doors hissed open. The room went dead silent. It was a tableau of chaos. Ava was on stage, huddled with the frantic MC, her face sheet white. The board members were in a tight knot near the front, whispering urgently. And in the front row, my father. Robert Whitaker was standing, his back to me, his shoulders rigid, every eye in the room reporters, contractors, local politicians, WLB executives snapped to me as I walked down the center aisle. The only sound was the click of my heels on the hardwood floor. I did not walk to the stage. I did not walk to the press. I walked directly to the head table, where Harris, the gray-faced CFO, was frozen, his half-full coffee cup trembling in his hand. I placed a slim leather-bound folder on the table in front of him. It landed with a soft, definitive thud. "Mr. Harris," I said, my voice clear and amplified by the sudden, absolute quiet. "As a member of the press and an interested party, I am a legal guest here, and as a legal guest, I am delivering this to you." He stared at the folder, as if it were a bomb. "What is this?" he whispered. "It is a notarized legal document," I said, loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear. "It is my official, final, and irrevocable refusal of any and all current or future roles, titles, or positions at Whitaker Land and Build. It confirms I have never been an employee, I have never been on the payroll, and I have zero fiduciary duty to this company. It also confirms," I added, letting my eyes drift to Ava, "that all intellectual property developed by me, including the small Whitcoto assets I generously offered my sister yesterday, and the entirety of the Nexa House Labs platform, is my sole and exclusive property. Please ensure this is entered into the official corporate minutes of this meeting." A flashbulb went off, blindingly bright. The dam of silence broke. The press swarmed forward, a wall of microphones and cameras. "Ms. Rogers, Ms. Rogers." A reporter from the Denver Business Journal shoved his microphone in front of me, cutting off 3 others. A direct question: "Is Nexa House Labs a competitor to WLB? Are you actively planning to replace your father's company in the healthcare sector?" I looked directly at him. I did not look at my father. "We are not replacing Whitaker Land and Build," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "We are replacing waiting. The traditional model is built on delays, patience, shareholders, and the planet don't have time for that model anymore. We replace waiting with speed. We replace excuses with execution." Speed. It was Ava. She had found her voice. She stalked forward to the podium microphone, her face a mask of furious, condescending disbelief. "Speed," she repeated, her voice a sharp, sarcastic imitation of my own. "That is so easy to say when you are playing with computer models. Sienna, it is easy to make a flashy video in a warehouse. You have absolutely no idea what it takes to get medical-grade licensing. You cannot just speed up federal compliance. You can't just automate state-level health inspections. That process takes years. It takes relationships. It takes legacy." She smiled. A thin, venomous expression. She thought she had me. She thought she had found the flaw, the one piece of traditional business I could not solve. I turned from the press. I looked past Ava to the AV booth at the back of the room, where the same terrified tech who had shown the headline was now trying to become invisible. "You," I called out, my voice commanding. "Put my feed on the main screen." He froze. "Put my feed on the screen, now," I ordered. He fumbled with the controls. The blank screen flickered, and then my phone's interface appeared, mirrored for the entire room to see. Ivy was at my side, holding the adapter cable. I tapped one icon. It was not a slide. It was a live web page, our internal Nexa House dashboard. "You are absolutely right, Ava," I said, my voice calm, conversational, as I walked toward the stage. "You cannot speed up compliance, but you can be prepared for it. This," I said, pointing to the screen, "is the Nexa House Live Permitting and Compliance Dashboard. The grid morph system does not just design buildings, it designs the paperwork. It pre-files all documentation based on known county, state, and new federal requirements before the first piece of steel is even cut." I pointed to a map of the United States, dotted with 6 green pins. "These are the 6 Apex BioCare sites, and these," I tapped a column. Are there live statuses? As of 9 a.m. this morning, preliminary permitting approval has already been granted for 14 key jurisdictional affiliates. The federal health standard you mentioned, our modular design was already compliant. We did not have to speed up the law. We just did the homework. A heavy, profound silence fell over the room. The reporters were silent. Ava was silent, her mouth slightly open, staring at the screen. She did not understand what she was looking at, but the contractors in the room did. The bankers did. My father certainly did. A heavy wooden chair scraped loudly against the floor. A large man stood up from the second row. It was Morrison, the concrete king, the man who had whispered in my father's ear less than an hour ago, the man whose entire fortune was based on pouring WLB foundations. Mr. Morrison, a reporter asked. Sensing the shift, Morrison did not look at the reporter. He was looking at me, but he was speaking to my father. Robert, he said, his voice a low rumble. I have worked with you for 30 years. I am a traditional businessman. I believe in concrete. I believe in the ground. He paused, then turned to face me. His eyes were hard, calculating. But I am not a fool. Ms. Rogers, that dashboard, that's not a toy. My logistics team has been warning me for 2 years that something like this was coming, that prefabrication was going to eat our lunch. He turned back to face the stunned press. His voice was loud, decisive. Morrison and Lake is proud of its long history with Whitaker Land and Build, he announced. But the future is speed, and the future is data. As of this morning, my firm has signed a letter of intent to become a certified logistics and foundation partner for Nexa House Labs. It was a public execution. He had not just defected. He had declared the king dead and bent the knee to the new ruler, right in the middle of the throne room. The room exploded in a cacophony of shouted questions. Enough! Robert Whitaker's voice was a roar. It silenced the room instantly. He moved from the front row, walked slowly, deliberately, up the steps, and gently, firmly, moved his eldest daughter, Ava, away from the microphone. He stood at the podium. He owned this room. He owned this city. He tapped the microphone, a sound like a gavel. This is theater, he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl, laced with a familiar, dismissive contempt. A flashy presentation, flashing lights and dashboards. My daughter, he gestured to me, is a brilliant architect. She always has been, but she does not understand traditional business. This was his rallying cry, the words that had worked for him for 50 years. She does not understand land value, he boomed, finding his rhythm. She does not understand commodity pricing, or labor relations, or the weight of what we do. We build monuments. We do not build boxes. I looked at him. The anger I had felt in the garage, the cold fury from the Broadmoor. It was gone. All I felt was a strange, cold clarity. He was an analog man in a digital world, furiously defending the steam engine as the train left the station. You're right, Father, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut straight through his projected power. He stopped, surprised I had spoken. I don't understand traditional business. I agreed. I tapped my phone. The dashboard on the giant screen vanished. It was replaced by a single, brutal, devastatingly simple slide, a bar chart. I understand numbers. The slide was titled TCO ROI Comparison Traditional versus Nexa House Apex Model. This, I said, using a small laser pointer from my pocket. The red dot landed on a tall blue bar. This is your projected 5-year total cost of ownership for one clinic, based on your own public tender data. It includes construction, maintenance, and energy costs. The red dot moved to a second, much smaller green bar. And this is ours. It is 30% lower. I clicked to the next graph. Emissions. This is your projected carbon footprint per site, I said, circling the large blue bar. This is ours, 55% smaller. We are not just cheaper, we are cleaner. I clicked to the final, damning slide. It was a timeline. And this is your timeline. Groundbreaking in 8 months, patient-ready in 24 months, 2 years. I moved the laser. This is our client's return on investment. They are not paying for a building. They are paying for revenue. Your model costs them millions in lost opportunity, in patients they cannot treat. Our model, I said, the red dot landing on the day 98 marker, has them patient-ready, federally compliant, and generating revenue in 98 days. I turned off the laser. I looked at the audience, the contractors, the bankers, the suppliers. They were not just whispering anymore. They were calculating. They were seeing the entire WLB model, the model that paid all their invoices, suddenly look slow, grotesquely expensive, and worst of all, obsolete. They were seeing, in real time, how every metric that mattered, cost, speed, and environment, was stacked against the traditional way. Robert was silent. He was staring at the screen. He had no answer. There was no rebuttal for the data. His argument, his entire identity, had been rendered irrelevant. The reporter from the Denver Business Journal, the same one, stepped back into the aisle. His voice was loud, clear, and aimed at both of us. Mr. Whitaker, Ms. Rogers, a question for you both. We both looked at him. You both claim to be building the future of healthcare infrastructure, but Mr. Morrison, your biggest partner, has just publicly defected, and these numbers, he gestured to the screen, are undeniable. He looked directly at my father, his face hard with the thrill of the kill. Then he looked at me. Is this a family disagreement? Or did the market just publicly pick a side? The walk out of that ballroom was the longest and shortest of my life. The flashbulbs were a constant, percussive assault, a wall of light that turned the chaotic scene into a series of stop-motion photographs. Ava's stricken, furious face, Harris, the CFO, staring at the legal document on his table as if it were a dead animal. The contractors, no longer guests, but analysts, huddled together, their faces grim, already calculating the cost of their loyalty. And my father, he did not move from the podium. He did not watch me go. He just stared at the blank screen where my data had been, a statue of obsolete power. By the time Ivy and I hit the lobby, the story was already free of our control. It was no longer a press conference. It was a market event. The data was the protagonist now, and it was moving at the speed of light. My phone was useless, a solid brick of vibration. Ivy's was the same. In the car, she finally managed to open a news aggregator on her laptop. The headlines were not just local, they were national. Forbes, the Denver disruption. How a $90 million startup dethroned a real estate empire in 1 hour. The Wall Street Journal. Data, not dynasty. Sienna Rogers Nexa House poaches 45 manas. Apex contract, exposing cracks in traditional construction. Bloomberg, Laughgate inside the press conference that became a $90 million compelling buy signal for modular tech. Laughgate, I said, the word tasting like ash. So they're calling it that. They are, Ivy said, her voice grim but satisfied. The clip of your father laughing at the Broadmoor is now the B-roll for every story about Nexa House. He gave us the perfect before picture. You gave them the after. The data did not wait for opinions. The numbers did not care about the family drama. They only cared about the balance sheet, and the market, as that reporter had shouted, had chosen its side. The first call came before we even got back to the warehouse. It was not a reporter. It was the CEO of the second-largest electrical contracting firm in the state, a man who had exclusively served WLB for 2 decades. Sienna, he said, his voice gravelly, no preamble. I was in the room. I saw the dashboard. I saw the numbers. Morrison was right to jump. My team. We're faster than his. We can get your crews certified for your modular connections in 1 week. I am sending a letter of intent to Ivy's inbox right now. We're in. That was the first. Before the end of the day, Two more major suppliers had defected, a steel fabricator and a regional logistics hauler. They did not call to negotiate. They called to capitulate. They sent LOIs. They saw the data on that screen, the 30% cost reduction, the 55% emissions cut, and they knew their old cash cow, WLB, was a dead man walking. They were running for the lifeboat. In 48 hours, 3 of my father's keystone legacy contractors had flipped to Nexa House. The supply chain I had been building in stealth was suddenly, powerfully, public. My inbox, when I finally managed to filter it, was a sea of new opportunities. The press, the contractors. They were just the first wave. The second wave was the money. 2 emails, both from names I recognized instantly. 2 of the largest real estate investment trusts in the country. They did not care about the drama. They cared about one thing. The first email read, "Saw your TCO numbers. Impressive. We manage 6 million square feet of industrial park assets. We have an acute need for scalable worker housing, your worker housing model. Can you deploy in 30 days or less? If so, we are prepared to discuss a $50 million pilot program." The second was almost identical. Re-30-day worker housing model. I stared at the screen. The very idea, the exact concept, the cheap trash modules he had dismissed in his study, the ones he had laughed at. 2 of the biggest REITs in the world were now in a bidding war for them. Then came the public sector. My desk phone, the one I rarely used, started ringing. It was a county commissioner from Wyoming. "Ms. Rogers, I just read the article in the journal. We have a severe winter coming. We have 3 rural clinics that are, frankly, death traps. Your Cold Start modular clinic, the one that runs on its own power. We need a demo. We need it yesterday." Before the end of the week, 5 different county governments from 3 states had called, all asking for demos of the Cold Start clinic, the 98-day model. They were not asking if it was possible. They were asking how soon we could start. The bleeding at WLB was not just external, it was internal. Ivy got a call from a terrified, anonymous contact in WLB's Human Resources Department. The fallout was catastrophic. It was not just low-level employees. 7 key project managers and senior engineers, the smart ones, the ones who actually knew how to build, the ones underpaid and overworked, who understood my data slide instantly had submitted their resignations. The rats were not just leaving the ship, the navigators were. And then there was Ava. She had agreed to a live interview on a major financial news network, a booking her PR team had no doubt scheduled weeks in advance to celebrate her new role. It was a train wreck. I watched it on the large monitor in our conference room. My entire team gathered around. The host, a woman known for her brutal, rapid-fire questions, was not asking about legacy. "Ms. Whitaker," the host said, her smile sharp. "Your new competitor, Nexa House Labs, has secured the Apex contract by promising a 98-day delivery. Your own bid was reportedly over 2 years. How did you miscalculate the market so badly?" Ava was visibly flustered. Her PR polish was melting under the hot lights. "Thank you. It's a valid question," Ava stammered, gripping the arms of her chair. "But what we are talking about here it's apples and oranges. We, at WLB, we build permanent, legacy structures. What Sienna is doing, it's fascinating, on a technical level, but it's not the same thing. She's building containers." I winced. Dante actually swore under his breath. "Containers," the host repeated, her eyebrow arching in disbelief. "Ms. Rogers' presentation showed military-grade filtration and a 30% reduction in operational costs. You're calling that a container?" "Well, containers, trailers, high-tech trailers, perhaps," Ava said, trying to recover. "The point is, the modular concept it's not permanent. It's temporary. The $45 million Apex contract doesn't seem temporary." "Ms. Whitaker," the host said, ending the segment. We'll be right back. The feed cut. Ava had, in 3 minutes, confirmed to the entire financial world that she was ignorant of the technology, dismissive of the market, and completely out of her depth. She had reinforced my father's core, fatal arrogance that if it was not a monument, it was a trailer, as if on cue. My private line rang. The Apex CEO. "Rogers," he said. He sounded energized. "I just saw your sister's interview. Containers. My board loved it. They are so confident you're going to eat WLB for lunch that they've authorized a new performance bonus." "Go on," I said. "The contract says 98 days. I want to see if you're as good as you say you are. We'll pay a $2 million bonus if you can bring all 6 sites online in 95 days. 95, I said, looking at Maya, who was already nodding. "We'll take it," I said. "Update the agreement. We start Monday." The night was a blur. The Northline Impact partner called me at 10 p.m. "Sienna, we are in a new reality," she said, her voice electric. "Your press conference was the most efficient capital raise I have ever seen. The data room we were planning to open in 6 months for the Series A, I opened it an hour ago. You what? The inbound calls are insane. Sequoia, Andreessen, Kleiner Perkins, SoftBank. They are not requesting a meeting. They are demanding a slot. I have 4 different VCs on my other line right now, all willing to fly to Denver, tonight, to get in on this. We are not talking a $90 million valuation anymore. We are talking a lot more." The temptation was there, the Silicon Valley rocket fuel, the blitz-scale money that would let me burn everything to the ground. "No," I said. "What?" she said, shocked. "No, we are not opening the Series A, not yet. Sienna, this is the moment. This is when you strike. You have the momentum." "I have the momentum," I agreed, my voice hard. "But I do not have the proof. Not at scale. My principle is this: we do not scale on hype. We scale on operational excellence. We do not burn cash to buy market share. We earn market share by doing what we said we would do. We are going to deliver the Apex project in 95 days. We are going to prove the model, and then we will write our own terms for the Series A. Until then, the data room is closed." There was a long silence. Then, a low laugh. "You are your father's daughter. In one way," she said. "You're stubborn, but fine. I'll tell them. You just became the most expensive no in venture capital. Godspeed. Rogers, go build your clinics." The final data point came the next morning, in the form of a devastating, deeply reported exposé in a construction industry journal. A former WLB project manager, one of the 7 who had resigned, had gone to them, anonymously. He provided invoices, change orders, and internal emails. The story laid it all bare. The traditional fees my father had built his empire on, the 20% markup for legacy planning, the sweetheart deals with suppliers like Morrison, where materials were billed at an inflated rate, with a kickback, the administrative costs that were pure, unadulterated graft. The article proved that my 30% cost savings were not just from efficiency, they were from honesty. Nexa House was cheaper because we were transparent. WLB was expensive because it was a dinosaur, a relic of handshake deals and backroom markups. The phone rang again. It was Ivy. "It's over," she said. Her voice was flat. "What is—" "The WLB board. My source just confirmed. They're not waiting. They just called an emergency session of the Internal Audit and Oversight Committee. They're not meeting to discuss Ava's press conference. They're meeting to discuss the fraud allegations from the journal article. They're meeting to discuss your father. The numbers, they were cold. They were clinical, and they did not lie. The call came not from my father, but from his assistant, a woman who had worked for him for 40 years and who still called me Miss Sienna. Her voice was strained. The professional veneer cracked. "Mr. Whitaker would like to request a meeting. Sienna, at your convenience. At my convenience. Not a summons, a request." He suggested his club, she continued. Or the WLB headquarters? No, I said. My office? Tomorrow, 10 a.m. I did not offer coffee. I did not offer a tour. When he arrived, I had him shown directly to the main conference room. It was not a boardroom. It was a collaboration space. One wall was floor-to-ceiling glass, looking out over the sharp, unforgiving beauty of the Front Range. The other walls were covered in whiteboards, still showing the chaotic, brilliant equations from Dante's last stress test. I was already seated at the head of the long, reclaimed wood table. Ivy was to my right, her laptop open. Robert Whittaker walked in alone. He looked smaller here, diminished by the bright, open-air architecture. His dark, traditional suit looked heavy, theatrical. He was a relic in my world of steel and light. He stopped, took in the room. He saw the view, the mountains he had tried to conquer, and he saw the whiteboards, a language he could not read. Sienna, he said. He did not sit. He was still trying to command the space. Robert, I replied. His eyes tightened. I had not called him father. The rules were already in play. You have made a significant amount of noise, he began, his voice a low, practiced rumble. He was trying to sound magnanimous, like a king addressing a precocious, but disruptive, courtier. A lot of flashing lights. You impressed the reporters. The numbers impressed the REITs, I said, my voice flat. The timeline impressed Apex. The defectors, like Morrison, were impressed by the data. His jaw clenched. Morrison is a fool. He forgot who built him. He remembered who pays his invoices. He chose a partner with a future. Robert stared at me, the mask of the patient father slipping. He saw this was not a reconciliation. The board is concerned, he said, shifting tactics. The audit committee, in their panic, is overreaching. This fraud talk in the journals is nonsense. It's a witch hunt, fueled by your publicity stunt. Was it nonsense? I asked. The 20% legacy fee, the materials kickbacks. That wasn't my data. Robert, that was your own project manager. He waved his hand, dismissing the truth. Bookkeeping, the cost of doing business, it's nothing. But you've created a perception problem. You've hurt the brand. You've hurt Ava. Ava hurt Ava, I said. When she called my military-grade medical clinic's containers on national television, she proved she is dangerously incompetent. She is your sister, he roared, slamming his palm on the table. The old thunder. The boardroom tactic. I did not flinch. Ivy did not even look up from her screen. The echo of his shout died in the high-ceilinged room. It had no power here. He saw it. The anger collapsed, replaced by a sudden, pragmatic exhaustion. He had come here with one play, and I had already blocked it. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He looked, for a second, like an old man. What do you want? Sienna, he asked, his voice quiet. You are mistaken, I said. This is not about what I want. This is about what you need. Your board is in panic. Your stock is toxic. Your key talent is walking out the door. You are here for a lifeline. He straightened up, his pride returning, insulted. I am here to offer you one. I am prepared to look past this chaos. I am prepared to offer you the position of Chief Design Officer for the entire Whittaker Land and Build portfolio. I almost laughed. It was the same laugh he had used on me, a laugh of pure dismissive ridicule. Chief Design Officer, I repeated. The title was an insult, a golden cage. You want to absorb me. You want to take Nexa House, my tech, my valuation, and fold it into your dying company as a new division. You want to put my logo on your letterhead to calm your shareholders. I want to bring you home, he said. This is your legacy. I built this for you. No, I said, my voice cutting and cold. I am not coming home. I am not taking a position, and Nexa House is not for sale. That offer is rejected. Then what? He demanded, his hands spreading, appealing to a logic he no longer controlled. You'll just let it burn. Let your family's company, the company that fed you, be torn apart by analysts. I am offering you a different path, I said. Not a merger, not an acquisition, a limited, project-based joint venture. Ivy looked up. This was her cue. A joint venture, he said, suspicious. You'd be a partner. No, I said. You'd be a resource. And I gestured to Ivy and the empty chairs around the table. Would be the solution, but we do it on my terms, non-negotiable. He was silent. He was listening. The chess game was on. Term 1, I said, holding up a finger. This is not a long-term corporate marriage. This is a project-by-project alliance. Any joint venture we pursue will be structured as a separate, single-purpose entity. The profit share on that entity will be 50-50, not a penny less. His eyes widened. 50-50. We bring the land, the capital, and we bring the technology, the speed, the efficiency, and the reputation that saves you from the audit committee. 50-50. Take it or leave it. I did not wait for an answer. Term 2. Nexa House Labs retains 100% absolute, autonomous control over technology, process, supply chain, and personnel. Your team does not consult on our designs. Your managers do not oversee our timelines. Gridmorph, our platform, dictates the project. WLB provides the land and the municipal access. We provide the execution. You will be a silent partner in the operation. You want to run my own projects, he whispered, aghast. I want to run our projects, I corrected. Successfully, which brings me to term 3. I paused. This was the one? Ava, your CEO, she is a liability. Her container comment cost your shareholders an estimated $70 million in market confidence in one afternoon. She does not understand the business. She does not understand the technology. And I will not have her incompetence jeopardize my 95-day delivery timeline. What are you saying? He said, his voice dangerously low. I am saying that before WLB can be a signatory on any new joint project, Ava Whitaker must be enrolled in and successfully complete a certified corporate governance and strategic management program. I don't care if it's Wharton, MIT Sloan, or INSEAD. I want an accredited third party to teach her what a balance sheet is. Until she graduates, her signature is worthless, and she is to have no contact with my team. You dare, he sputtered, his face turning a deep, dangerous red. You dare to give me conditions on my own family, in my own... He stopped, realizing he was in my office. You would humiliate your sister. I am protecting my investment, I shot back, my voice rising for the first time. I am protecting my company. She is a brand, not a CEO. You put her there to spite me. Now you will pay the price to educate her. This is insane, he said, turning away, pacing toward the window. I have one final term, I said, my voice returning to the cold, flat tone of the boardroom. Term 4. This is the last family conversation we will ever have. From this moment on, all interactions are business. All communication goes through counsel. Ivy will speak to your lawyers. You and I are done. No more father-daughter manipulation. No more media games. No more legacy talk. We are 2 CEOs, or we are nothing. Those are the terms. He stood with his back to me, staring at the mountains. He was trapped. The data from the press conference, the public defection of Morrison, the looming threat of the audit committee, the catastrophic interview with Ava. I had methodically taken every piece off his side of the board. This is a humiliation, he said, his voice thick. It's a lifeline, I replied, and your board knows you need it. He turned back, his face a mask of cold fury. I need time. I need to take this to the board. A week. He was stalling. He was looking for a counter-move. You don't have a week, Robert, I said. Ivy slid her laptop across the table, spinning it to face him. It was a live feed of the WLB stock ticker. It was a waterfall of red. "You don't have 48 hours," I said. "The audit committee meets tomorrow afternoon. They are meeting to decide whether to recommend your removal to the full board. They are meeting to decide whether to cooperate with the SEC investigation into the legacy fees your project manager leaked. You are walking into that meeting with one of two things: a complete disaster, or this." Ivy tapped a key. The stock ticker was replaced by a digital document. The cover page read, "Memorandum of Understanding WLB and Nexa House Labs Strategic Alliance." "You give them this," I said, "and you save your company. You save your name. You tell them you have secured the only path forward. You tell them you have brought the future to their doorstep." He looked at the screen. He saw the terms, all four, laid out in cold, black and white. He was looking for a loophole, a way to twist this. He was looking for a way to absorb my intellectual property, the one thing of value I had. "Mr. Whitaker," Ivy said, her voice quiet, clinical. "Before you review the core terms, I would direct you to Appendix B, the intellectual property firewall." His eyes darted to the screen. "This addendum," Ivy continued, "explicitly and irrevocably blocks any and all IP absorption, knowledge transfer, cross-licensing, or process assimilation from Nexa House to WLB or any of its affiliates. Our code, our processes, our logistics data, and the GridMorph platform remain the sole and exclusive property of Nexa House Labs. In perpetuity, you are buying access to the product. Mr. Whitaker, you are not buying the factory." It was over. Every door was locked. Every escape route was blocked. He had laughed at my toys. Now, he needed those toys to save his kingdom. He had two choices. He could refuse and be devoured by his own board in less than 2 days, or he could sign and surrender his crown to me, piece by piece, project by project. He looked at the signature line on the screen. He looked at me. His face was gray. The anger was gone, replaced by the hollow, empty recognition of checkmate. He walked back to the table. He picked up the digital stylus. His hand, the hand that had signed billion-dollar deals and built a skyline, was shaking. He signed his name. He did not look at me. He did not say a word. He just nodded. Once. A short, sharp, defeated gesture. It was not just an agreement to save his company. It was an admission. The contract was signed. The handshake, cold and final, was an ending. But it was also a starting pistol. The clock began not in a boardroom, but on 6 empty, windswept plots of land. On a Monday morning at 0600, the 98-day project was live. The Apex BioCare deployment, the thing my father had called impossible, was in motion. This was not a single project. It was a synchronized, multi-state invasion. 6 sites, 3 states: Wyoming, Colorado, and rural Utah. 6 simultaneous builds, 6 ticking stopwatches, all slave to the master clock in our Denver warehouse. GridMorph, the AI I had built in a garage, was now the field general. The moment the contracts were signed, it did not just send orders, it unleashed the supply chain, our 3 satellite fabrication plants, the hidden network we had built in stealth, spun up to full capacity. This was not construction. It was high-speed manufacturing. The Clinic 12 modules, our pre-certified, standardized cores of high-tech medicine, began rolling off the lines. They were shrink-wrapped for transport, stress-tested, and loaded onto heavy-haul trucks. Maya Brooks, our head of supply chain, lived in the command center. She did not sleep. She tracked every truck, every driver, every highway sensor. She was not moving buildings. She was moving assets. Day 12, the first crisis, a storm. A freak, unseasonal blizzard that dropped 2 feet of snow on Interstate 80, severing our primary artery into Wyoming. The media called it a snowpocalypse. Our lead convoy, carrying the first 2 clinic cores, was trapped. Dead stop. The site manager's call was frantic. "We're buried. Sienna. The highway patrol says the road is closed for at least 36 hours. We're dead. We've lost the schedule on day 12. I stood in front of the main monitor in the warehouse. Dante was beside me, his face grim. "He's right," Dante said. "We can't lose a day and a half. We'll never get it back." "No," I said. My voice was calm. I was not looking at the weather map. I was looking at Gridmorph. "We are not losing 36 hours. Reroute?" I spoke to the AI. "Reroute all Wyoming-bound fleets. Find all secondary and tertiary state highways. Cross-reference with live road clearing schedules and the load capacity of every rural bridge. Find a path. Now." The system processed 2,000 miles of alternate routes, calculated fuel loads, driver-hour restrictions, and the risk of ice on non-priority roads. The screen flickered. 12 minutes. "New route," Maya announced, her voice sharp, already on the phone with the lead driver. "It is 400 miles longer. It is ugly. It uses county roads, but it bypasses the entire shutdown. It will get us there." She looked up at me, a fierce, tired smile on her face. "New ETA 6 hours late. We lost 6 hours, not 2 days. We can make that up." "We will," I said. Day 24. The second crisis. Utah, Morrison's crews, our new foundation partners, had been perfect. The concrete slabs were cured, the utility hookups staged, the modules were on site, waiting for the crane, and the state health permit vanished. It was 6 hours late. The local inspector, a man who had been in his job for 30 years, a man I was certain had a WLB holiday gift basket on his porch every December, had suddenly found a procedural query. He was stalling. He was slow-walking the process, waiting for the traditional phone call, the one that came with a consulting fee. "He's playing the old game," Ivy said, her voice like ice. We were on a video call. "He's waiting for a bribe. Robert Whitaker's way." "He's not getting one," I said. "This is not a negotiation. Ivy, launch the priority file." Ivy's smile was thin and dangerous. She did not call the inspector. She did not call his boss. She called an assistant attorney general for the state, a contact she had cultivated months ago. The priority file was not a plea. It was a weapon. It was a standardized, pre-vetted legal dossier. One Gridmorph had assembled on day 1. It contained every state and federal code we met, every certification for every bolt and panel, and most critically, a copy of the Apex BioCare contract, highlighting the critical, life-saving nature of the deployment for that district. It was not a request for a permit. It was a demonstration of overwhelming, absolute compliance. It was a legal broadside, with the implied threat of a massive lawsuit for tortious interference with a critical medical contract. The permit was electronically signed and approved 59 minutes later. The 6-hour delay was erased. The old game was over. Day 41, the third crisis, the eastern Colorado plains. A sandstorm, not snow, but grit. Blinding, horizontal dust, with winds gusting to 60 miles per hour. It was too dangerous for the cranes. The main assembly, the delicate, high-precision work of lifting and locking the modules together, ground to a halt. We lost the entire daylight shift. "We're bleeding, Sienna," Dante reported from the site, his voice tight over the comms, the wind roaring in his microphone. "We've lost 8 hours, and the forecast says this could last until midnight." "Then we do not use the day," I said. "Go to the backup plan. The storm is forecast to break by 2100. We'll work the night shift." "It's not that simple," he argued. "We'll lose 3 hours just lighting the site. We don't have the grid power for a full night crane operation out here." "Yes, we do," I said. "Check the manifest for your own site. The cold start protocol." There was a pause. I could hear him tapping on his tablet. Then, his voice, full of dawning comprehension. "My God, the backup solar generators, the ones for the clinic." "They're not just for the clinic," I said. "They're for the build. You have 2 mini solar stations, fully charged, sitting in a container 50 feet from your crane. Turn them on. Light that site up like a football stadium. We own the night." At 21:30, under the bright, silent, solar-powered floodlights, the crane lift resumed. The lost shift was recovered. The battle was not just steel and concrete, it was perception. The Apex board was nervous. The market was watching. So we made the entire process radically transparent. We put live feed cameras on all 6 sites. We did not show them a dirty, chaotic construction zone. We showed them a time-lapsed, before and after feed, updated hourly. The world watched, live, as empty concrete slabs became complex, finished buildings in a matter of days. The first pass medical inspections came. Gridmorph had pre-filed 90% of the documentation. The inspectors were not auditing a building. They were verifying a checklist. The first site passed with 0 citations. The others followed. We did not just build the clinics, we trained the staff. While Dante's crews were still calibrating the HVAC, we shipped 50 VR headsets to the Apex regional offices. We trained their new nurses and technicians in a fully immersive, one-to-one virtual model of the Clinic 12. By the time they walked into the physical building, they already knew where every oxygen port and diagnostic screen was. There was no learning curve. The final days were a blur of systems checks. The stopwatch was screaming. Day 96. All 6 sites. The structural assembly was 100% complete. The interior design pods, the pre-built rooms, were locked in place. The flooring was sealed. The medical furniture was bolted down. Day 97. Systems hot. Dante and his engineering teams ran the final, 24-hour calibration. HVAC, medical-grade air filtration, negative pressure rooms, and most critically, the bulk oxygen and vacuum systems, all green. All 6 sites passed their final, zero-notice compliance checks. Day 98. 9 a.m. I stood on the clean, concrete walkway of the Wyoming site. The air was cold and thin. The clinic gleamed. A sharp, white and steel statement of intent against the brown plains. The CEO of Apex BioCare stood beside me. He was not looking at me. He was staring at the building. "It's done," he said. It was not a question. It was a statement of awe. "It's done," I confirmed. I handed him the digital access key, the final sign-off for all 6 sites. 98 days, as promised. He looked at his phone, which had just buzzed. "I just received the final all clear from my COO. All 6 sites are handed over. All systems are green." He turned to me, and for the first time, he smiled. It was a real smile. "Ms. Rogers, as of this moment, we are exercising the performance option in our contract. We are expanding the order. We want 10 more centers. Immediately. Have Ivy send the new paperwork." He did not have to mention the progress bonus for the first 6. The wire transfer alert hit my phone 2 minutes later. A 7-figure sum that was merely a down payment on the new war chest. The real victory. The one that mattered. Came 2 days later. It was the front page of the Laramie County Gazette. It was not a picture of me, or the CEO, or the building. It was a photograph of an elderly woman, a local rancher. Her face weathered, holding the hand of a young nurse. She was walking into the bright, open door of the new clinic. There was no line. There was no waiting room packed with the sick and the coughing. There was just access. The headline was simple. "The wait is over. Apex Clinic sees first patients." I was back in the Rhino warehouse when I saw it. I had the newspaper spread out on my desk, the ink still fresh. My team was quiet, exhausted, and vibrating with the wind. My desk phone rang. The private line I had reserved for the Series A investors. I had told Northline to hold them off. I had told them we would not take $1 of their money until we proved the model at scale. We had proved it. An email notification popped up on my screen. It was from the Northline partner. The subject line was just one word. "Congratulations." The body of the email was a single screenshot. It was the digital ledger for the Series A funding round we had not even officially opened. "The offers are in," she wrote. "They have been in for a week. They did not wait for your permission. They have been fighting to get in. They did not care about the wait. They just wanted to be first." I looked at the number at the bottom of the screen. The round was not just funded, it was oversubscribed. By 400%. The ceremony was a desperate act of revisionism. Whitaker Land and Build, Bleeding Partners and Credibility, had booked the largest ballroom at the Brown Palace, a shrine to Denver's gilded, traditional past. They called it, in a masterpiece of corporate spin, the WLB and Nexa House Strategic Handshake Ceremony. It was not a celebration, it was a tourniquet. The new, sleek WLB logo was projected onto a massive screen, but it was forced to share the space. Beside it, equal in size, was the sharp, geometric, confident logo of Nexa House Labs. The press was packed in, but the energy was not excitement. It was the predatory quiet of a feeding frenzy, a room full of sharks forced to listen to polite speeches. My father stood at the podium. He was a lion in winter, diminished, but still trying to project his old, effortless command. He wore his darkest suit, a power play from a dead era. He gripped the sides of the lectern, his knuckles white. "Today," he began, his voice resonating with the familiar, practiced cadence that had built his empire. "Today, we mark not a change, but a continuation." I watched him from the front row. Ivy sat beside me, silent, her laptop open, monitoring the live feed. "We celebrate the union of legacy and innovation," he continued, "the enduring strength of tradition and the dynamic energy of the future. WLB has always been about family, and today, we are bringing that family together." He was trying to spin it. He was trying to reframe his surrender as a benevolent act of fatherly reunion. He was trying to absorb my victory, to dilute it, to claim it as his own strategy. I let him speak for exactly 30 seconds. I stood up. The scrape of my chair on the polished hardwood floor was the only sound. The room, focused on him, went utterly silent. Every camera, every eye, pivoted to me. "Robert," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was amplified by every microphone in the room, which had been straining to catch any whisper from the front row. He stopped, mid-sentence, his eyes, for a split second, flashed with that old familiar fire, the fury of being interrupted. But it died instantly. He was a king in check. He could not move. "If I may," I said. It was not a request. I walked up the low steps to the stage. I did not go to his podium. I walked to the second, matching podium that had been set for me. I stood parallel to him. We were two separate, equal powers. "I am not here to talk about legacy," I said, my voice clear and cold. "Legacy is a story we tell about the past. I am here to talk about the data that defines the future." I signaled to the AV tech at the back of the room. He was my employee, not my father's. The screen between us changed. The two logos vanished, replaced by a single, stark slide. "My father's company," I said, "is built on the legacy model." A graph appeared. It was a thick, dense, muddy-looking line. It showed a high cost per project, a slow timeline, and a massive carbon output. The x-axis was time. The y-axis was cost. The line barely moved up. It just grew thicker, heavier, and more opaque. "This," I said, pointing, "is a model built on opaque supply chains, backroom legacy fees that average 18%, and project delays that are measured in quarters, not days." I could hear the reporters muttering. This was the data from the leaked reports, now confirmed and projected for the entire world. "But there is a new model," I said. I clicked the remote. The slide changed. The muddy graph was replaced by a second chart, titled "The New Trajectory." It was a single, clean, sharp, exponential green line, shooting up and to the right. "This is the Nexa House model," I said. "This is a 98-day delivery. This is a 55% reduction in emissions. This is a 30% lower total cost of ownership, and—" I paused, looking directly at the press. "It is built on a non-negotiable principle of 100% fee transparency. There are no legacy markups. There are no backroom deals." I turned from the screen to face the audience. I had them. The bankers, the contractors, the investors. They were not watching a family drama. They were watching a corporate execution. This is not a handshake to celebrate the past, I announced. This is the new standard of business. Nexa House Labs has agreed to partner with WLB on future projects. But let me be perfectly clear, that partnership is contingent, project by project, day by day, on two principles: absolute ethical adherence in our supply chain and total, radical transparency in all fees. The age of the traditional markup is over. The legacy fee is dead. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal, the one who had broken the story, stood up. His voice was sharp. "Ms. Rogers, that is a high bar. You are talking about fundamentally changing the way this city, this state, does business. What happens if WLB cannot meet that standard? What if your father's company reverts to the old model?" I looked at him. I did not hesitate. I did not look at my father. "Then we stop," I said. "Immediately. The contract is voided. There are no second chances. There is no family discount. The market does not allow for nostalgia. We move on." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a truth that costs billions of dollars. And then, another sound. A chair, a microphone feeding back. It was Ava. She was walking from the front row, not to the stage, but to a smaller microphone on the floor. The one reserved for audience questions. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking so badly, she had to grip the stand. "She is right." Her voice was thin, but it did not break. The room held its breath. She is right," Ava repeated, stronger. And I was wrong." A gasp went through the press corps. This was not on the script. This was real. "I stood on a stage 2 months ago," Ava said, her eyes finding mine. "I was arrogant, I was ignorant, and I called her technology. I called her life's work. Containers. I did not understand the data. I did not understand the business I had been handed. I was so focused on building a brand that I forgot you have to actually build things." She took a ragged, shuddering breath. She was looking at the floor, but she forced her head up. "That is why I am publicly announcing today that I am stepping back from all day-to-day operations at Whitaker Land and Build. Effective immediately." The room exploded in murmurs. I looked at Robert. His face was granite. He had not known she was going to do this. This was her own move. "As of Monday," Ava projected, her voice gaining a strange, new strength, "I will be enrolled in a full-time, intensive executive governance and strategic management program at MIT Sloan. I am going to learn the business. I am going to learn what a supply chain is. I am going to learn what a balance sheet is, and I will not return to WLB. I will not sign a single contract until I have earned the right to do so. Until I actually understand what I'm doing." The cynicism in the room cracked. The hard-bitten reporters were silent. This was not spin. This was a public, painful, and profound admission. In the back of the room, a young engineer, one of the few who had not resigned from WLB, began to clap. Just one person, then another, then Morrison, the concrete king who had defected to me, stood up and delivered a slow, respectful applause. In a matter of seconds, the smattering of claps grew. It became a genuine, rolling wave of applause. They were not applauding her failure. They were applauding her honesty. I looked at my father. He was not looking at Ava. He was not looking at the crowd. He was looking at me. His face was a mask. The anger, the arrogance, the ridicule. It was all gone. He was just a man, stripped bare on a public stage, watching his entire world change hands. He held my gaze, and the man who had laughed, the man whose laughter had started this war, was gone. He just nodded, a single, short, sharp acknowledgement. It was not forgiveness. It was not love. It was respect. It was the only signal he had left. It was his final, silent admission that his time was over. I turned back to the podium. The AV tech, on his own, flashed the final slide. It was a press release that had just crossed the wire, timed to this exact moment. Nexa House Labs, Series A close confirmed. The old $90 million pre-money valuation was now a footnote. The new confirmed valuation was orders of magnitude higher, but that was not the important line. The important line was at the bottom, a binding clause insisted upon by me and agreed to by every new investor. Lead funding includes a binding mandate for socially responsible investment (SRI) and full supply chain transparency. I had not just built a company, I had built a new set of rules, and the biggest money in the world had just agreed to play by them. I stepped to the microphone one last time. The applause had faded. The room was waiting. My father laughed when I refused the family business, I said. My voice was quiet, but it filled the room. He was right to. I did not choose the family business. I looked at the clean, ascending green line on the screen, the graph that represented my entire fight. I chose my way of building. I turned. I did not look back. I walked off the stage, past my father, past my sister, and through the wall of flashing cameras. The curtain had dropped. The game was over. The market, the customers, and time itself. They had all cast their votes. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to connect with you. So please drop a comment below and let me know where you are listening from, and share your thoughts with me. And do not forget to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories. Like this video, and give it some extra love by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.